I really need to start writing things down. I had a lovely moment in the car, probably on Tuesday, thinking about it. Because obviously, yeah, let's pretend it was on Tuesday, it doesn't really matter. And today being Thursday, where I was like, I've got this idea for a video, and then I've got this idea for a video, and then actually I can do the same videos about this topic as well, so actually there's a whole chain of videos I can do. I've got too many ideas for videos. I have no idea what those ideas were. I've completely forgotten what those ideas were. So yeah, definitely need to start writing things down, not least of which in a calendar to tell me where I should be and when. But anyway, now, up until about 5 minutes ago, I was considering making this an entire sob story about my love life, or lack thereof, and musings about the decisions I've made in my life and so on and so forth. But then I remembered that I haven't yet made a video about cultural appropriation. And so that will be my video, because I'm definitely going to remember the love life video, but I may once again forget this one. So, cultural appropriation. So this has been coming up a bit during Movember for me. I think it was a bit before Movember actually that I went on a whole tirade on YouTube. I say on YouTube, in the comments section of a YouTube video. Not even tirade, just a nice long explanation of why something is cultural appropriation and why it isn't. It comes down to intent. It's not even an intent. So it's where the intent is born from that matters. So potentially. So the thing about it is that it's like, okay, so imagine you meet somebody who's speaking in a foreign accent, and they say something grammatically incorrect. Now you're going to correct them on the assumption that they need correcting, that they aren't aware that they've made a mistake, and they will appreciate being told the correct way to say it. Certainly that's the way I work. I've worked as an English teacher before. I've learned other languages before, and it's useful to be told when you get something wrong. That's how you remember that you got it right. However, as an English speaker, I regularly say things which are grammatically incorrect, and I'm very aware that I'm saying them. I'm very aware of what I'm doing. And I'm doing it on purpose because English is stupid. So, I would find it annoying if somebody tells me, oh no, I think you meant to say were, not was, that kind of thing. So, or, you know, that's not how you pluralise penis or something like that, whatever. It bloody is. Anyway, and the same sort of thing happens with cultural niceties, cultural hotspots and difficult things to talk about. So, for instance, when I was at university, I've told quite a few people this before, when I was at university I lived in a house with 3 Pakistanis, or people of Pakistani descent. And therefore, I spent a year using the word Paki without it being racist, because within the Pakistani community, at least at the time, that's just how you refer to Pakistani. It's quicker than saying Pakistani. There's a whole 2 less syllables in it. And it's fine. And I was allowed to do that. I was an honorary member of the community, that kind of thing. Because, I'm there. However, as soon as I leave that house, I no longer have that leeway. And the reason is because I am that foreign person using grammar incorrectly. So I know a fair few foreign people who, if they were to use grammar incorrectly, I'd be willing to believe that they've done it on purpose. They understand what the grammar should be, they are playing with it, and I'll let that slide. However, if I don't know somebody who's foreign and they do it, then I'm just going to assume that, they're foreign and they've got it wrong. And the same sort of thing, if you use, what could be either a racial slur or not a racial slur, and you do not demonstrate, you do not have a way of demonstrating that your intent is coming from a good place, then people will just assume that you're racist. People will just assume that it's a bad thing that you're doing. Which is annoying, certainly. But, if you are part of a culture that is being marginalised, that is being discriminated against, then that's a far bigger problem. So my problem of not being allowed to say potential racial epithets outside of those communities that know that I don't mean it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things compared to their right to not think that the people around them, the people who are meant to be their friends, are being racist and discriminatory towards them. So that's what that is. And that goes for cultural appropriation as well. Okay, so if you have somebody who is doing something of a particular culture and they don't appear to have any sort of connection to that culture whatsoever, then the assumption has to be that they are doing it out of a place of malice, albeit benign malice, not realising what they are doing, not realising the effect, not realising how it's going to make people feel on the other side of it, So, for instance, the example I always like using of somebody that's not doing cultural appropriation is Snow. So, Snow, you may remember, from the 90s, did a song called Informer. And if you weren't around in the 90s, or if you weren't paying attention in the 90s, you may not have realised that the reason that Snow is called Snow is because he is not nearly as West Indian as he sounds. If you listen to Informer, that, for all intents and purposes, sounds like a straight up yardie singing. It's a great song. But if you watch the video, that man is Canadian, and he is very much European descent Canadian. So, why is that not cultural appropriation? Because it is well documented that he grew up among a Caribbean community, or West Indian community, something along those lines. That was his culture. Even though he doesn't look like it, it's all good. People are fine with him doing that. Okay? He grew up in the culture, he appreciates the culture, he gives back to the... I don't know if he still does it, it's entirely... I've not even slightly kept up with his career or his life. It's entirely possible that actually he was a bag of dicks afterwards and just, went off to live in Beverly Hills or something. It seems unlikely. I doubt he's made that much money from it. Not as if it gets that much airplay anymore, but I'll still get some. Anyway. So he's allowed to, because whereas If you remember, I mean, it happened everywhere in the 90s, but so you know, in Wayne's World, I think it was in the first Wayne's World, there's a moment where the guy that runs the arcade does this whole rap. And that rap is definitely cultural appropriation, because we know that that person has nothing to do with the hip hop culture, certainly did not grow up in a black urban environment, is not giving back to that culture in any way, and therefore it is cultural appropriation. He's taking something that they have laboured for and is profiting off of it. And it's easy to tell when somebody is being culturally appropriative with rap, because they'll start with "my name is X and I'm here to say," or at least that's how easy it was in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. So yeah. So the reason this has been coming up recently for me though is because was it on Saturday? Yeah, I think it was on Saturday. I went to this thing called the Ruhi Project. And the Ruhi Project was a celebration, and I mentioned this in a previous video, but I didn't go into any depth. It was a celebration of world cultures and coming together through music, which is fine. So my choir there, I mean, they needed space to fill, I'm guessing. But when they started out, so the original Ruhi Project itself is more like a band type thing, where they have sort of influences from all over, and yeah, well, you know, primarily East Asian influences, and that's what they tend to work with. It's more East Asian, and then sort of fuse more into Western. That's fine. And so they did a few things that, you know, they showed us some of the Indian drums that I can't remember the name of. They showed us, you know, they would talk about sitar and that kind of thing, and then they did some like fusion between, you know, rock and sitar and those drums and everything like that. I have issue with how well they did it, but that's fine. You know, clearly this is something that they love. This is something that they've put effort into, so they deserve. They're allowed to do that. And then they had another guy come on, so he's more reggae. Now he is, I believe, I couldn't really see him from the back very well, but I believe he was actually also Indian. Judging by his name, I would say he's also Indian, but then I also get Indian and Trinidadian names confused a lot, so I'm not a great judge for that. But let's pretend that he was actually of South Asian extraction. And he, however, was doing reggae. Once again, you can't be mad at him, because clearly he has a lot of love for the culture, he has a lot of love for the genre. And so, you know, he's gone out there, he's learnt about it, he's spent time living in the Caribbean and living life and understanding the culture, and he's very much participating in it, he is giving back to it. Fine, that's fantastic. That's not cultural appropriation. However, then they had the Latino segment. The Latino segment started with La Isla Bonita by Madonna. Well, Madonna has potentially Italian descent. That does not make her Latina. It might make her Latin. I don't know. Like literally Latin. Anyway. Yeah, nobody is going to claim that she is in any way Latin, but there we go. Or Latina. So there we go. They finished off their 3 songs with Camila Cabello, with Havana. So you'll recognise that from being all over the damn radio for the past year. Now, Camila Cabello herself is Cuban. She is allowed that. That is her heritage, that is her culture, that is how she has grown up. That is all good. However, this was, near as I could tell people from the Ruhi Project doing it, they were South Asians or people of South Asian extraction doing it, and other South Asians or British people. You know, either way, not Latinos, who were doing this. And then the middle song was Suavemente by Elvis Crespo, which you'll recognise if you've ever been to a salsa bar that's willing to play some pop merengue. Because it's one of those, like, it's just the cheesiest songs. Like, if you imagine that you were, like, in Japan or something, and they're going to play some traditional English music, or they're going to play some archetypal English music, and they play the Baha Men or something like that, then, you know, it's not hurting anyone, but it's also just a lack of respect, especially because, you know, they could easily, you know, they were bringing in guest artists from all over, all sorts of guest artists, including a Colombian dance troupe. Any one of those would have been able to sing, well, at least the one of those songs that's actually in Spanish, but they just didn't put the effort into it. This was a culture that didn't merit actual representation. It just merited a mention. It merited, oh, I like this kind of music. It's a bit fun, so let's do that. And it's, you know, it's sad to say. It's a problem as well, because this thing, if you, as an English person, you all know many South Asians. They are good people. They are successful people. They are very much integrated into our culture. You are less likely to know Latinos. Now, I tend to know quite a few Latinos. The ones that I meet when I'm out and about are cleaners. Almost exclusively, they are cleaners. You know, there'll be some that are working in tech, that kind of thing, that they're here and there. But generally, the ones I end up speaking to, they're cleaners. That's a big part of what they are. They are, you know, they are still a marginalised people, because, you know, they're an immigrant people, just like they would be from anywhere else. They're generally coming from South America, from relative poverty, and that's where the Latino music comes from. It comes from those cultures. And to just say, you know, I like that, take it, make it your own, but then without any reference to the original culture, without any deference to the original culture, it doesn't hurt anybody, but it is disrespectful and it is disappointing. And obviously, you know, this has been happening, and it's been happening to South Asians for years. You know, it's been happening to black people for years. It's been happening to all, you know, it's been happening to East Asians, Pacific Asians for years. It happens to everybody, but it is too easy. Once you feel like you're in a safe place, to neglect the position of other people and not notice what you are doing. And that's something worth considering.